Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating journey through the biological world. We're going to uncover exactly how living organisms grow, adapt, and survive, generation after generation. It's a story of constant renewal and, honestly, some pretty incredible transformations. Let's get into it. All right, let's kick things off with a simple yet kind of mind-bending question. Why does a caterpillar look absolutely nothing like a butterfly? I mean, think about our own growth for a second. Human growth is pretty predictable, right? You look at a baby and you can generally see the basic blueprint of the adult they're going to become. But certain insects and animals go through a transformation that looks totally alien. How on earth does a crawling, leaf-munching bug turn into a delicate flying insect? Here is our quick roadmap for today. We're looking at the cycle of life, the magic of metamorphosis, complete versus incomplete changes, plant life cycles, and finally, why understanding all of this actually matters. Okay, section 1, the cycle of life. So, if you just observe the environment around you, you'll notice that living beings are born from an egg, maybe a seed, or as a tiny creature. We define a life cycle as that sequence of events in stages of development, a cyclic process that an organism passes through from birth to death. A grown organism produces offspring, and those stages just repeat. And it's this repeated cyclic process that is absolutely crucial. That's exactly what ensures living organisms actually survive in their environment, generation after generation. A perfect baseline for this is a cycle we're all intimately familiar with, the human life cycle. Just look at the sequence here, from infancy through childhood and adolescence, all the way up to adulthood. While an infant differs vastly in body size, they basically possess a very similar appearance to the adult. Humans, much like rats actually, pretty much just get bigger over time. We grow, sure, but we don't change our fundamental morphological features, our physical appearance, in any drastic way. Moving right along to section 2, the magic of metamorphosis. This brings us to a process called metamorphosis. As defined here, it's the process involving completely different morphological changes in different stages of the life cycle that some organisms go through just to become adults. But why? Why is this even necessary? Well, animals like butterflies, mosquitoes, and frogs hatch from an egg. But here's the catch. An egg doesn't hold enough nutrients for them to hatch as fully formed adults. Because those initial nutrients just aren't enough, they have to adapt. They go through specialized morphing stages where their sole job is literally just to feed and survive in different environments until they're finally ready to become adults. And you know, the butterfly's transformation is a visual marvel of this exact process. It starts as a tiny egg, hatches into a larva, eventually wraps itself up into a pupa, and finally emerges as this beautiful butterfly with colorful wings. These stages have totally different morphological features. And it's not just for show. The adaptations of these specific stages for different environments are exactly what lock in their survival out in the wild. So the real takeaway here is that we're looking at two totally different game plans in nature. On one hand, you have humans and rats, born morphologically similar to their parents, just, smaller. On the other hand, you have organisms like frogs and certain insects that go through these massive, drastic morphological changes. For that second group, morphing into entirely different forms is quite literally the only way they can feed enough and survive long enough to ever reach adulthood. This builds a really clear, simple classification system for us. First, we have organisms with different morphological forms. The shapeshifters, right? The butterfly, the frog, the mosquito, the cockroach. And then we have the ones without different morphological forms, the ones that merely scale up in size, like humans and rats. It's a beautifully simple way to categorize what is actually a really complex aspect of animal development. All right, section 3, complete versus incomplete changes. Let's look at the two types. First up, we have complete metamorphosis, and the butterfly gives us the perfect mini narrative for this. Step 1, the adult lays the eggs. Step 2, the eggs hatch into a larva, which we all know as a caterpillar. Now, this caterpillar has specialized mouth parts specifically designed to chow down on tender leaves and grow incredibly fast. Step 3, it becomes a pupa inside a cocoon. It stays inactive, it doesn't feed, while these massive internal changes take place. Step 4, the adult butterfly emerges. And here's the craziest part. The adult doesn't chew leaves anymore. It feeds on nectar using a completely new, specialized organ called a proboscis. They literally rebuild their entire bodies to survive in totally different ways. But hey, nature also has a slightly less extreme route, called incomplete metamorphosis. Creatures like cockroaches and grasshoppers, they just skip that dramatic pupa or cocoon stage entirely. The young hatches straight from the egg as a nymph. A nymph is smaller, it doesn't have wings, and it isn't sexually mature yet. But morphologically, it actually looks a lot like the adult. To grow, these nymphs just pass through several stages by shedding their exoskeleton over and over until they reach their final adult form.
Next up, Section 4, Plant Life Cycles.
Because it's not just bugs and animals, right? The cyclical life stages of flowering plants like paddy and jock plants follow very similar strict rules. They start from seed germination, they grow up into young plants, and eventually they become mature plants capable of flowering and producing their very own seeds to start the whole process over again. Whether you have wings, a backbone, or leaves, having a cyclical life cycle is a universal rule for living things. And finally, Section 5, Why Life Cycles Matter. Let's talk real-world application. So why should we care? Well, understanding these cycles is far more than just textbook theory. Mapping biological stages is a critical, everyday tool for 3 huge areas. First, pest control to protect our agriculture. Second, controlling disease vectors, like identifying exactly where mosquitoes breed so we can stop the spread of illness. And third, the conservation of biodiversity. By knowing exactly what an organism needs at every single distinct stage of its life, we can actually manage and protect our shared environment. Let's look at the so what factor with a real-world example. The fruit fly. It's a major pest, causes massive damage to crops worldwide. But how do farmers fight it? They use its own life cycle against it. Farmers know that the larval stage is the most vulnerable and the easiest way to control the population. So, by regularly inspecting fruits and destroying the fallen or infected ones where those larvae live, farmers can stop the flies before they ever mature and reproduce. Pinpointing this one specific biological stage is the key to efficiently protecting our food supply. Which leaves us with this final, kind of profound question to ponder. How does understanding the microscopic changes of a single insect help us protect our entire global ecosystem? As we've seen today, by paying close attention to the smallest, most vulnerable stages of life, we actually gain the incredible power to safeguard the largest systems on Earth. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep observing the amazing cycles of life all around you.